Hello, thank you for joining our recorded version of Making Connections. Making Connections is all about helping to support our children with social communication, making connections with family and friends. It's the core for improving their overall communication skills. My name's Adrienne Nichols, and I'm a family support coordinator at Maltby Centre in Kingston, Ontario. And I have two other co-facilitators with me today, and I will let them introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Rob Diebel. I'm an occupational therapist with the preschool team at Kids Inclusive.
Hello, I'm Mona Goodland. I'm a speech language pathologist with Early Expressions of Kids Inclusive.
Now that we have reviewed your child's communication skill level, and we've looked at self-regulation needs, and maybe you've had a chance to jot down some of the areas that you see that your child might need a little bit of support around how to manage their own emotional regulation or self-regulation, to be in a place where they're comfortable and calm. Now we can begin to determine what the next steps are to begin teaching our child new or increased communication skills. So again, let's start sort of from the broad sense of looking at teaching and how can we begin setting up a positive teaching moment with our child. So this is where I'm going to be asking you to pause the recording because I want you to think about your favorite teacher. What made that teacher your favorite? What did they do that helped you to learn? Especially if it was an area that might have been challenging for you, a subject that maybe wasn't something you were most interested in. How did that teacher help support your learning? So I want you to take a moment now to pause the recording, think about that, and write down how that teacher helped support you in learning. Now I'll have a moment for you to reflect on what you've written down. I'm assuming that what you've written down is something very positive in terms of their approach with you. You may have written things down such as the teacher took interest in learning about you, what your interests were, maybe embedding your interests into the learning, maybe making some accommodations to the learning, looking at the learning goals and breaking them down into smaller steps. Maybe the teacher was providing you with additional praise in your learning and taking notice of, the hard work that you were putting in. But probably your list there really reflects a positive approach. I'm assuming that there was nothing listed there where a teacher was unhappy and used some sort of more punishing approaches to try to help you learn. But you had somebody probably that was really on your side, that was really understanding in terms of what your needs are, probably an empathetic person, maybe had great energy. And so when we begin working and supporting our children with any new learning, especially things that might be a bit hard, we want to consider that. We want to consider how do we approach this in a really positive way, because that's how we learn best. And so that's the very first step when we begin looking at supporting and teaching new things is how do we make it fun? How do we make it reinforcing? And how do we keep that positive approach? Oh, reinforcement. This is the way, when we're thinking about teaching or even ourselves as students, when we are reinforced for the things that we're working on, it really, really makes it much more motivational for us to learn. When we get the smile from the teacher that we're doing a great job, when we get that high five, when we're getting some of that function, if we talk about from the very beginning when we started the workshop, and I'm speaking about the function to behavior, when what we're working on that's hard amounts to something really positive and reinforcing for us, we have a greater likelihood of wanting to practice that again because we feel good about it and we're reaching some function. There's a positive effect to what we're working on. And so I want you to write down the things that your child might really enjoy, those motivating things. If you are watching them playing, what are they going to? What are they interested in? What are they laughing about? It might be physical kind of play. It might be they like colors. Maybe it's certain food items that they quite enjoy eating. So I'm going to have you pause now and write a list of things that your child really, really enjoys, that they may want to ask for, that they want to engage in.
Now we can explore some strategies to help with self-regulation. Children can build trust and safety in routines which are consistent and predictable. Although we can do our best to make sure that routines are consistent and predictable each day, it's not realistic for a routine to ever not have some element of change. When change does occur within a routine, although it can be dysregulating for a child, we can really help to smooth different transitions and changes within their routines with the help of visuals being integrated and used throughout the day. With visual schedule, a child can visually see the different pictures that represent their tasks throughout the day along on a strip, which can then be reviewed with the child so they can know what's coming next and what is occurring in the moment. And by reviewing this with the child beforehand, as well as during the task, it can provide calm in knowing what's next and what's expected of them so that it's not a surprise when they're needed to leave an activity that they might be enjoying. We can also use different visuals such as first then boards. Now, first then can be quite an effective strategy, especially when going from an unpreferred task to a preferred task. If a child is distressed by having their hair brushed, but they really, really enjoy getting to play with their car trucks, you can say first hairbrush, then cars. It allows them to know, okay, although this is distressing and it's not my favorite activity that I'm doing, I know that something positive is going to come after, which is motivating to complete that task to then move on to something that is more rewarding for them. A choice board can also be quite effective as a visual. There's a lot of power in that element of choice. They might be items, all items within that choice board that you want them to be able to do, but having the ability for them to have some control in choosing which they want to be able to complete next can actually be quite regulating experience as they're really exercising that independence and that autonomy to be able to make that choice and feel more comforted as opposed to it being chosen for them. Sensory diet and lifestyle. So we want to be aware of their sensory needs and that sensory seeking or sensory avoiding. And there's different equipment and activities that can really help to meet these needs or to avoid those distressing situations. And up on the slides, you'll see some examples that are being provided. If you know that a child is regularly touching items around there, or if playing with different items with their hands is a calming activity, then you could have something such as a sensory station or a sensory bin at a table in the home. When the child's upset, you can say, okay, let's go over here and play with some Play-Doh or in that sensory bin. Or you can even schedule different activities or breaks throughout the day where you can give them time where they have that Play-Doh or kinetic sand. And by giving that scheduled need for that touch play throughout the day can help avoid some of that seeking behavior and help them to maintain regulation. Some children can also be overwhelmed in different environments. And you see in that middle picture, you have a little play tent. And sometimes that gives them the ability to escape that overwhelming visual or auditory information and have their own little space that they can control and they can sit in and be quite calm in. Another example of this could be a sensory blackout tent, where it's a type of play tent. It has no windows and a little screen that can come down and really creates a dark environment that can play to both sensory avoiders, where they need to escape all that sensory information and just have dark, calm time, but also can help seekers, where if a child's dysregulated, if you put different sensory lights, such as visual sensory equipment, such as a bubble tube that lights up, or a magic spinning light wand, or different toys that flash in that dark tent, they become very, very bright, which can help to really have a sensory need be met and help with that calm. Another great example is a mini trampoline, which you see there. With a mini trampoline, children can get all that movement activity out. And it often can be a really efficient way because they can do this throughout the day and also use screen time as a way to also meet a sensory need. Another example, which you can see on the slide, is that swing. There's different types of swings. That is more of an open style, but that really meets that movement need also, where some of them will spin and some of them just swing. There's also one called a hammock style sensory swing, which hugs you like a cocoon and provides some deep pressure. But with a swivel, you can also spin them and swing them. This can be used before bed as a really calming sensory experience where you can gently swing them back and forth, because children often find that rhythmic one direction swinging to be calming, or they could meet that spinning need and more exciting sensory need in breaks throughout the day, or when they're upset, they can use this swing as a way to meet a need to calm down. You can see there where a child is chewing on an object that's more almost like a silicone chewable. This can be called chewlery. For younger children, I'd recommend something called chewy tubes or super chews. These are silicone chewables that are larger and really reduce that choking risk of children under 3. For children over 3 that have that need to chew and are either chewing on clothing or anything in their environment, they can have a breakaway necklace with a pendant or beads that when they're chewing on something, you could say, hey, I recognize that you need to chew and you want to chew on things, but this is a safe option for you to chew on. And when it's observed, you redirect them to that safe chewing object. So you're still allowing them to meet that need, just in a safer, healthier way. In the picture, you see a child with headphones. This can be for those children that find loud noises or layered, busy environments very distressing. And it just reduces the level of noise that they're experiencing, where a child might have difficulty participating in the community or a classroom or events with a family. Simply by having these headphones on, they're now able to participate by removing that barrier. If children don't tolerate wearing these headphones, you can slowly build up that time that they wear them by introducing in a calm state. And when it's distressing for them, remove it. But in a calm state, when they're happy, you can slowly build up the time that they need to use it. Because when it's introduced in an angry state, they often will not want to have a new thing such as headphones introduced unless they're used to wearing them. Deep pressure touch. This could include cuddling, those tight hugs that you give, or a squeeze on different areas of the body. It can have a calming and a focusing effect. This can be met in scheduled periods throughout the day, or it can be an effective way to redirect or help with calming when a child is upset. An example you can see in the photos is with two hands coming together, where if you press your hands together, you can put your elbows out and press your palms together. This puts pressure through the hands, through your wrists, and activates all those muscles and provides great sensory input that can help with calming when a child's upset. Now, if you can review this with them, say each day in a nighttime routine, it can start with that co-regulation where you do it with them, but lead to that self-regulation where they might be at school and in a lineup and be able to put their hands together and push together. And you'll see an exercise ball where you can have them roll over the ball actually on their stomach, and you can hold them firmly over the shoulders and then on the thighs, and you can gently roll them forwards and back. And by doing this, you're providing deep pressure through those hand contacts and that contact with the ball, but also that calm movement need to go back and forth. There's many different seats. You've probably heard of that classic beanbag, which you can see there, which you almost sink into and gives you that squeezing sensation. That's a great way to provide deep pressure. You may have heard about weighted blankets. Although they are regularly used, I often just put a disclaimer out there about how there's many safety risks associated with blocking airways and their ability to remove them when sleeping, which can be quite a safety concern. As a replacement, I would recommend a weighted toy or weighted animal. Heavy work. And when I say heavy work, I'm really referring to that extra intensity to really exhaust the muscles and burn a lot of energy in the child. Some children with these sensory seeking needs can run and run and run for all day, it seems, and never get tired. So we're looking at those higher level activities, such as climbing, jumping. Sometimes you can do things such as animal walks where they're climbing like a bear on the ground. Or you could simply do a tug of war with them using a towel. It's really thinking about that pushing and pulling of the muscles, which provides more energy burning and more sensory input to help really meet those needs effectively and efficiently in smaller periods of time. Mindfulness is an amazing skill that helps children be aware of how they feel, but also helps them calm effectively. it starts with co-regulation, where you can teach them these skills. But the more you teach them in a regulated, calm state where they're able to learn with repetition, these co-regulation skills for mindfulness will then turn into those self-regulation skills. I like to say this is something that can be great to do as a part of your nighttime daily routine. One we already talked about is that deep pressure, hands pressing together activity, and sometime to add a movement, add a mindfulness component to it, I can add, when I press my hands together, I am calm. Another thing is deep breathing. This can simply be where you can cue them with, we're going to smell the roses and blow out the candle, where we want them to not just do that fast breath. We want it to do a slow but deep breath out. An effective way to teach this is also with visuals, where there's many visuals such as an infinity sign or a star, where on each point you can go breathe in to one point, to the middle, and then to the next point, breathe out. And it helps to keep it consistent. Another way you can incorporate sensory into breathing and make it interactive for your child is to hold out your hand open and trace up your fingers where you take a breath in. And at the top, you then go trace down your finger. And when you go up the next finger, you take the breath in and you repeat for 5 fingers, which gives a nice routine of taking 5 good deep in breaths and deep out breaths. Another good example of a mindfulness approach that incorporates sensory could simply be where a child uses their finger and their open hand to count and touch each one of their fingertips. Now, whether it be in their head or out loud, they can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then switch hands and touch each fingertip 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So we've considered the environment, your child's sensory system, and self-regulation. Now let's look at helping your child's communication and social interaction. Interaction is the key to successful communication. Back in our definition, we spoke about exchange of information. Encouraging your child to interact or engage is laying a good foundation for improved communication skills. There are many types of and ways to engage. Making eye contact or touching someone, for example. Taking turns in any manner of activity is great interaction. Even something as simple as rolling a ball back and forth or passing a tool between you to play a game is solid interaction. Imitation of movements, actions, sounds is actually turn taking. Plus, it's really fun. Shared enjoyment, joint attention of an activity is wonderful engagement. Let's talk some more about these. Joint attention is shared enjoyment of the same thing. Example, you point to a dog and say, look, and your child looks at the dog and then back at you. Joint attention is an important milestone in social development, as your child is showing interest not only in objects, but in people and their reactions. Babies typically start to show joint attention from infancy. By 6 months of age, they're following your gaze to see what you're looking at. By 12 to 14 months, they will point intentionally to show interest and then back at you for your reaction. Children with autism or those who have social communication challenges have difficulty with joint attention. To encourage joint attention, engage in interactive play by following your child's lead, commenting on their actions, and using gestures. Focus on activities that allow for shared enjoyment and turn-taking, like doing a puzzle or blowing bubbles. Imitation plays a crucial role in language development. It helps children learn to copy sounds, words, and actions, which are essential for building a repertoire of communication skills. Also, imitation promotes social interaction and understanding of communication, laying the groundwork for continued language growth. Imitation begins when babies start copying their parents. Newborns can mimic facial expressions within days. By 5 months, they can imitate vocal sounds. They coo, cry, and babble. By 8 months, they can copy familiar gestures like clapping and waving. While imitation typically develops naturally, some children benefit from more direct guidance and lots of repetition of an action or sound. By doing so within natural social interactions and by including your child's interests, you are setting your child up for imitation success. Sometimes using hand-over-hand prompts is helpful, but sometimes it's not. You know your child best. Encourage your child with enthusiasm, talk about what they're doing, and continue imitating them during enjoyable activities. Overall, ultimately, what we aim to do is to help families enhance their child's functional communication, help them to learn that communication can improve their life. We've covered a number of strategies today to do this, and we've considered the lens of sensory issues, self-regulation, and behavior. Briefly, here are some strategies that we've talked about today. Sharing the same focus of attention or taking turns, maintaining attention by using visuals, and as we discussed, these can also help with your child's understanding of language. Interpret your child's message and always provide the spoken verbal equivalent of what they're trying to tell you, tempting them to communicate, but trying not to frustrate them at the same time. Following the child's lead and joining in on their play. Remembering your child's self-regulation needs, set up the environment for them. Focus on positive teaching and use your child's reinforcers, those things that they like best. These strategies plus more can be found on our Kids Inclusive website. Go to Services and Programs, Early Expressions, and then What You Can Do Now. I can think of no better way to conclude this workshop than with a quote from Mr. Rogers. Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning, but for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. So never underestimate the power of play. Thank you for attending this Making Connections workshop today. We hope that you've taken away some good learning for this and that we've been able to help you. Thank you. Bye-bye.